19 after 7, we're set to get our ninth mayor since the year 2016. Some of those, of course, who have vacated the seat was really through no fault of their own. But it does give you an indication of the revolving door Johannesburg has had to deal with. It is expected, of course, following the resignation of Kabelo Gwamanda, that the current MMC for Finance, the ANC's Dada Morero, will go back to the mayor's office. He agreed to talk to us this morning, just by the way, and very late last night he pulled out of that interview. The ANC then offered us another representative, Sasabona Manganyi, who is the Greater Joburg Regional Secretary. He agreed to come on in Morero's stead. He is still apparently not available at this hour. But the other person whose views we wanted was, of course, the CEO of the organization Undoing Tax Abuse, Wayne Duvenage, who has honored our request to speak to him and who joins us now on the line. Wayne, we've seen this revolving door, and as it has happened, residents of this city have watched it crumble before our very eyes. Will Gwamanda's departure make any difference?
Hi, good day, Bongani. Well, it all depends on who they do put in to replace him. Now, as we all know, the Joburg is in a dire situation. It's crumbling by the day, and the longer we wait to deal with the leadership, the bigger this hole gets. Dada Morero's name has been put out there. We're concerned about that. We believe he's been part of the mayoral committee as the MEC of Finance. We haven't seen any display from him, the mayor, the city manager, that leadership team around issues related to saving the city's finances. Instead, they're borrowing us, trying to borrow themselves out of the problem. 2.5 billion rand loan a couple of weeks ago. This is an 80 billion rand budget. The city is massive, and imagine not doing the work that you should be doing, to cut your cloth, to look at where the waste is, and demonstrate to the citizens how we save money in a situation like this. Instead of doing that, they go and borrow more money. So we don't see any joy coming out of Dada Morero's appointment. And if we don't get the right visionary leadership that is going to steer the city in the direction it needs to go, and that means holding people accountable, people like Helen Burtis, who's been implicated in reports on the fire that killed 74 people in the city last year. There's just so much that's not being done, and we can't see where the leadership is going to come from.
Wayne, politics, as you know, is a numbers game, and perhaps we can get distracted by focusing on personalities at times. The 2.5 billion rand loan you mentioned has received sufficient backing in terms of the numbers in the council. So forward it goes. But looking at, shall we say, the list of priorities, what would you say the incoming mayor, presumably the incoming administration, what are some key areas they need to focus on urgently before we go to the polls in 2 years?
Well, first of all, I'd suggest that they get the city back to work, sort out the civic centre. There was a fire. There's a small area that needs attention, the slab. That's a bit unstable. It's not a big job, and what we find, the city is dispersed in its administration. It's very difficult to do business with the city. You speak to developers, architects, and so forth. It's very, very tough. So we need to get people back to work. We need astute financial hygiene and management, because as we've said in the past, Bongani, going into your budgets and doing a zero-based budgeting approach helps you to understand where there is waste, where there are contracts that have been living in the system for years with above-inflation increases. We need to start reviewing our expenses before we start passing these costs on in increases such as the 230 rand levy on prepaid electricity, borrowing more money. So yes, while that loan was approved by others, that I think because we are in such a desperate situation, imagine a business with its back against the wall and it needs to survive. You look to cut your cloth. We don't see that behavior here now, but I know in business it's operating in a competitive environment, but this is essentially a competitive environment because we're losing businesses and people that are emigrating, and the city is going to lose its value in its properties. We're going to have stranded assets. So we need a visionary leadership that's going to really start addressing how we spend our money. All these different business units, Pick It Up, City Power, Joburg Water, are all being badly managed. We need a visionary leader that's going to take us forward.
We need a visionary leader indeed. Wayne Duvenage, appreciate your time. The organization Undoing Tax Abuse CEO. Listening to the tail end of that is the representative from the ANC who is joining us now. Sasabona Manganyi is on the line, the ANC's Greater Regional Secretary. Thank you so much for your time. Kabelo Gwamanda has gone, but critics will say you, of course, were part of the mess. He was a mere puppet. The strings were being pulled from behind. How do we get Joburg moving forward?
Good morning, Bongani, and good morning to your listeners. Bongani, look, the first thing that I want to indicate is the fact that the resignation of the mayor is not informed by, the other issues that have been raised that has to do with issues of service delivery and etc. Because those are issues that when we took over as the government of local unit, the situation was very, very much worse. Since we took over, there were some level of improvements, and of course, we are not happy with the rate in which the services have improved. But I think it's very much unfair to the outgoing mayor for, everyone to reduce even the failures that when he was elected, he found them created by the Democratic Alliance, a multi-party coalition, and you will know when we took over, we found the city in a financial shambles where they could not even pay service providers. There were no services. The situation was very worse. So we have, of course, had to reconfigure the current coalition arrangement so that it can favor the party with the majority of seats in council to have the mayor. And that is the main reason why the mayor has resigned, to allow that principle to be implemented. Of course, you are correct that there is still a lot that we need to work on. We still have got the city that is very dirty, that we need to ensure that it is cleaned. We still have got, areas where there are potholes that we must fix. The infrastructure challenges in the city, it's very huge. We must ensure that infrastructure development and refurbishment is part of, the priorities of the new mayor to ensure that there is accelerated service delivery in the city of Johannesburg.
I think if I may come in there, I think it is fair to reflect on the tenure of Kabelo Gwamanda and indeed the coalition that put him in place there. I think many residents of Johannesburg would disagree with you, and they might say he was ill-equipped for the position in which he was placed. And I'll give you one example. When that fire broke out that threatened to collapse the M1 bridge, it took hours and hours and hours to put out that blaze. Cable thieves, of course, who had, tried to burn the cable running along the sides of the bridge. That kind of thing happens all too routinely. I can give you any number of other examples around service delivery failures, how residents are often without water. There hasn't been a clear vision articulated neither by the mayor nor indeed the coalition that has backed him. Let's hope that from Friday going forward, and whoever comes into office will offer us that vision, because one thing we can all agree on is we need to get this city back, maybe not to its former glory, but somewhere near at least a city that is functioning. It is simply too important to fail. Things simply cannot go on this way. Sasabona Manganyi is the ANC's Greater Joburg Regional Secretary.
Current events, developing stories,
tough questions.
Your voice making a difference.
This is Breakfast with Bongani Bingwa.